Today we are joined by Cara, Linda, and Alison, and I'm Bill Tierney. And I'm a personal development coach, and I'm a certified IFS practitioner. And I've created some exercises in a program that I wrote called the Self-Led Project. And the exercise today that we're going to talk about and do is called burden-led or self-led. So if you're familiar with the IFS model, you've heard that terminology, burden-led and self-led. This exercise should help you to begin to distinguish that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read about 4 or 5 paragraphs here, and then we're going to open it up for discussion and get some examples from Alison, Linda, and Cara. Here we go. The purpose of this exercise is to help you distinguish when you are self-led and when you are burden-led. Recognizing this difference will help you tend to your burden parts with compassion and care. Doing so will give you access to the qualities of self. In this exercise, you will begin to draw a distinction between parts that are self-led and parts that are burdened. These parts are responding to the unresolved past and cannot help but react to current circumstances as if the past is still occurring in this present moment. They cannot be self-led because they're reacting to the pain and shame of the past. By the way, sidebar here, if you want to look down in details underneath the video, you should find a link to this exercise and you can follow along. So if that's the case, if you want to follow along, just pause the video now and then come back once you've had a chance to open up, and then you can just follow along. Notice when your parts respond to self-leadership and when they don't. To determine when your burden parts have been in the leadership position, in other words, when you are burden-led, consider your state of being when not experiencing at least one of the qualities of self. Here's step 1 of the exercise. The instructions are, over the next week, notice how you respond to the circumstances of your life when led by burdened parts. What are some of the ways you think, feel, and act when burden-led? So if you want to take this on, then plan some time in your calendar to slow down a bit and reflect on what we're about to talk about over the next week or so. I've provided some examples below, but instead of examples today, you can read those in the PDF that you can access. Instead of examples, we're going to talk in the group about some real life examples of when this has come up. Your experience may not be reflected in what you hear from us today. Your parts might show up differently. The examples that you're going to hear from us today are provided to give you a general sense of what it means to be burden-led. Okay, so some of your parts may become activated as you bring attention to the contrast. So as you're doing this, as you bring an attention to the difference between self-led and burden-led, parts of you might get activated even just doing that. If that happens, you might just ask the activated part to unblend. That's the language of the exercise. I'm going to say it slightly differently, though. If it happens, you might just ask the active part if it's able to relax just temporarily. Let it know that you aren't asking it to change, and you're not judging or criticizing the part. Now, if you do notice, if you do have judging and criticizing parts, that's a part of you, and ask that part to relax as well so that you can truly, authentically be in a place of non-judgment and non-criticism. And then you want to ask any parts that have an agenda to relax as you bring compassion, mindfulness to your internal system. So here's what you're going to do. Over the next week, look for examples in your life when your parts relax and allow self to lead. So we're doing it both ways. Notice when parts are leading, notice when self is leading. And what are some of the ways that you think, feel, and act when self-led? So more examples on the PDF. We'll talk about some also now with Linda, Cara, and Alison. So if you look on page 3, you can see a form that has all of the prompts for how to do this exercise. So what we want to start with is a circumstance. A circumstance when a part of you became activated. Does everybody have one? Okay. So let me work all the way through this with one of you at a time, and I would love it if we could work all the way through with each of you if you're willing. And then we'll probably have some discussion around it as well. So who's willing to go first? Thank you, Cara. I'll be taking some notes. You'll see me looking down. That's me taking notes. So let's start. What is the circumstance? And see if parts will allow you just to report factually what the circumstance is rather than getting into a big story about it.
Yeah, so I have a major work project due today, and my supervisor texted me changing the deadline of the project, bringing it up an hour.
Okay. Very succinctly stated. And I can easily imagine parts could get activated. So what thoughts, I mean, it's happening now, isn't it? And it happened earlier today. So you've been aware. What thoughts are you aware of that you have had today, maybe that you still have now?
I don't know about thoughts as much. What I mostly noticed was like a intense anger at the text.
Okay, that is the next prompt. What emotions and body sensations did you and are you experiencing?
Yeah, a lot of anger. Let me think about thoughts that I had. Had a lot of anger, a lot of pressure to do something, and almost an immediate pressure to want to like respond back and sort of correct my boss or say something to them about how they shouldn't be doing this.
Impulse to respond in a way that are you feeling like you need to somehow manage that? That impulse to respond?
Am I feeling that way right now?
Yeah. Have you been feeling that way? And do you feel that way
I
now?
was earlier.
Yeah.
I was earlier when I got the text, yeah.
So there's an impulse to respond. There's also a resistance to that impulse.
Yes.
And you physically can feel that, can't you?
Yes, it's a tension in my belly.
Tension, yep. Okay. Tension, which matches up with that resistance. And if we could go back to thoughts for just a second, there's anger. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, I experience thoughts that actually seem to be the cause of the anger, or I experience thoughts that are scrambling in there to explain the anger. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. Yes, I'm aware of a part that's not wanting me to go to the thoughts right now a little
Okay.
bit.
Like you have the thoughts, but there's a part that doesn't want you to be saying it out loud here on the screen in the video.
Yeah, so there's a part I'm noticing a part managing it that's saying maybe we can summarize the thoughts rather than state them directly.
Okay. Do you want to do that?
Yeah. Yeah, so that part is saying that the thoughts that I had were angry at my boss for what they said. So they were telling me why my boss was a problem. And they were telling me that I needed to respond, that it was like imperative to respond back to them, correct them. They were doing something really wrong against me, that what I'm doing is really important and I'm not being valued.
Yeah. Say the thing about important again. What is it that's important?
That my time is important and that the original agreed upon time is like I deserve to have that full time to finish the project. And that I'm not being like my thoughts are telling me that I'm not being treated well when my boss tries to move the time up by an hour.
Yeah. So actually lots of thinking going on, huh? It wasn't that there wasn't thinking, it was just you were being cautious about what you shared. Yeah, got it. Okay. The next prompt is actions. What did you do or what did you want to do and then didn't do it?
I wanted to fire off an immediate text explaining how problematic this was. There's a part in the text where my boss tried to guilt me too. I really wanted to respond to that. So I had really strong impulses. And my other impulse, I had another one, was to immediately talk to somebody else about it.
Mm-hmm.
And vent and say, can you believe that, my boss just sent this text? Can you believe this? This is on today of all days. So I did talk to a couple people.
You did some camplaining. That's what I call that, camplaining. All right. All right. And then once this circumstance occurred that you had this work due today, did you notice any self qualities?
Well, I noticed once I was able to talk to a couple people about it that my system settled a bit and calmed a bit, and I was able to not send any text. I'd quite a strong charge for a while and wanted to respond. And then I noticed a lot of compassion for my parts and a lot
Yeah.
of validation that was saying like, hey, this is really hard and this is kind of messed up what my supervisor is doing. And so that compassion kind of helped calm my system. So I didn't fire off an angry text back.
Okay. So the purpose of this exercise was to determine have you been self-led or burden-led through in this circumstance? What do you say? What do you think?
A mix of both.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like to me too.
Yeah.
What I heard from you was that the automaticity of your response was burden-led. But once you did get validated, it wasn't just complaining, as I was trying to be funny about. It was looking for validation. And once you found that validation and were able to accommodate your parts' need for that, whether they knew they needed it or not, your parts were able to calm down. And that's one of the cool things about what happens in our system is that if and when our parts get what they need or think that they need, then our system calms, and just what automatically happens is self begins to emerge. And we begin to experience self qualities. We don't have to try to be in self. Does that fairly characterize your experience?
Yes. Once my anger was validated first externally, and then it started to become validated internally with compassion, as
Yes.
opposed to the validation that keeps feeding it. My whole system kind of settled, and I didn't send a text back. And interestingly, a little bit later, my supervisor then sent a text that said, "You're fine, everything's okay." So the urgency of whatever was going on for them died down too. So
Okay. Great. One noticing that I have here is in your example, the human need for connection was explained to me a little bit more clearly. That maybe the reason that we have a human need for connection is because some people are in self when we aren't. And they can bring enough self energy to help us calm our system long enough until we can bring our own self to our system.
yeah.
Yeah, very cool. All right. Well, Cara, anything else you want to say about this exercise related to that circumstance or anything else?
I'm having one other thought, if I can share.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the need for the external validation that I sought and was able to get from a couple people. And that also, because I'm noticing in my system, and I was at the time, that there's a part of me that minimizes my own response, which is a burden part. And
Yeah.
that external validation helps with that.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's just kind of a little piece in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the term that they used in my intimacy from the inside out training. That was co-regulation, right? That's what that is, right? Co-regulation. Yeah. The therapists in the room know exactly what that is. That's a relatively new term to me since I came to IFS and began to learn about the model. Yeah, I knew codependency, but I didn't know co-regulation. Yeah. Let's check in with Linda and Alison. Okay, if it's okay with you, Cara, for not feedback, but just reporting of what they experienced as you did your work. Can we? Okay. Linda, either Linda or Alison or both of you, one at a time. What was your experience as Cara did her work?
I was really tracking, like what you noticed, Cara, that need for that external venting and validation, and then that being able to go back inward. And I just am in this training this month on IFS and the polyvagal, which is really fascinating. And so I kind of went with the central nervous system, which is the co-regulation piece of it, of that. And I think you said it so well, Bill, that, you know, sometimes we need human connection to help co-regulate, to help bring self on board when we can't. And so it was, for my system, it was really cool to track things in my life or parts in my life where I need that connection with somebody else. I need to feel, parts of me need to really feel that validation, or even that, for me, it was like, am I right? Like, am I seeing reality right? Because for some of my burden parts, they're stuck. And so their perspective is different. And so it's helpful to have a present day validation of, yes, your response in real time is appropriate, which is part of the co-regulation piece of it, I think, for our nervous system. So yeah, I was really kind of listening with that ear in mind, since that's kind of where my head is at right now. And I was just so much appreciation for your parts, and for that ability for your parts to trust you enough not to respond via text right away. That requires a great deal of trust, I think, for our parts, when that impulse is so strong and they show up with that burden, to be able to stand down enough. Was really cool. So thank you. That was fun for my system to listen to and kind of track with my own journey.
Thanks, Alison.
For me, I had so much going on because of like having talked to Cara this morning. And so it's kind of like blending these two conversations together in a way. Like, I had all sorts of thoughts and feelings going on about that. It also resonates with what the example I'm going to bring. Yeah. And so I was kind of like also thinking about my example at the same time. I'm just like, oh, yeah, like this is similar. Yeah.
Well, shall we just go there now, Linda?
I'm sure.
Okay. Was there more that you wanted to reflect back, though, in terms of your listening experience with Cara?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was just a huge appreciation that Cara's showing up here. Like, that's like, what?
Yeah.
With all that going on,
Yeah.
here you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like a lot of appreciation for that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well then, Linda, what's the circumstance? And as I coached Cara, just be as succinct as you can with telling us about it, and try to help your parts not get into too much storytelling.
Mm-hmm. No, it was pretty simple. I got a text from my son this morning asking if I could babysit this afternoon, and I had like my whole day planned, and so it's just like it's just like, oh no, now what am I gonna do? Because like I hate saying no. Yeah. So yeah, lots came up just with this simple little text request. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Great. So the thoughts.
Mm.
I heard, oh no, I hate saying no. What am I going to do? What other thoughts did you notice?
Yeah. Well, I was just like, well, I'm already babysitting tomorrow, so like if I say no today, it should be okay. But like sort of weighing and measuring that. Yeah, lots of thoughts around that. And then also some like resentful thoughts, like now I have to take care of this. This just adds to my burdens.
So,
and feeling badly, like lots of feeling bad for having these thoughts too, like this critical part, like for even having resentments and yeah.
Oh, there's a part of you that's criticizing your resentful part. You
Yeah.
having resentments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not just being okay with doing it, like adjusting my schedule. So yeah, I can do it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So there's some I should type thoughts in there. And
Definitely.
and some he shouldn't thoughts in there.
Yeah, I guess so.
Well, I apologize. I must have been relating so closely that I interjected some of my own stuff there.
Or I wish this hadn't come up because I don't want to have to make a decision here.
Right.
Yeah.
So you didn't mention fear as an emotion, but it sounds like that thought maybe is loaded up with some fear.
Yeah, I was going to save that for my emotions.
Okay, let's go there now. So what emotion?
Okay.
Well,
That.
I've got resentful, burdened, and critical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so yeah, there's a fear about saying no. Like yeah, and I guess it's a thought too, like, oh, he's gonna be mad at me if I say no. And yeah, and there's fear around that. Like I don't wanna disappoint.
Mm-hmm. Look at all these trailheads, huh?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've got so many parts up about other things. This is just like another little thing on top.
Yeah. Yeah. Good thing we don't have to put our life on hold and pause every time we notice a part that's burdened, that's influencing us. Frankly, I was a little overwhelmed when I first started doing my IFS work, thinking that was really the responsibility I was taking on by looking at my parts. I'm pretty well past that now. What I've noticed is that just giving attention to the parts that are being burdened or that are being activated seems to calm them, seems to relax them a little bit. And sometimes that's just enough. What other feelings, Linda? We've got resentful, burden, critical, fear.
Guilt.
Guilt, yes.
Yeah. Guilt. So, because I actually sent a text and said, "Sorry, Josh, I've got a lot going on today."
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You said no. Oh my God.
I said no.
You sent him a text and said no. You're following the instructions just exactly. So what's the actions that you took or that you wanted to take and didn't?
Yeah. I sent that text.
All right. What self-qualities did you notice in this circumstance?
So I think I met with lots of those parts, trying to listen to them. And then I am recognizing more and more that it's okay to do what I need to do for myself. I really wanted to go for a ski.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know if I actually met with any compassion. I met with curiosity for sure, all those parts. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I did drag them all along with me on my ski.
You did not?
I did.
Oh, you did.
I was not alone on my ski.
I see. Did anybody get hurt?
No.
That's a lot of people to be skiing on a pair of skis.
Yeah, and my reporter part was there too, and pulling out my phone and writing notes. Every once in a while I would stop my ski and take notes so that I wouldn't forget about what these parts are telling me. Yeah.
You were listening to your parts. You weren't just listening to them, you were also interacting with them.
I was definitely paying close attention and trying to understand all the different connections. Yeah, between the
Right.
parts.
So let me just, I'll pause in between each one of these descriptors of self qualities. You identified curiosity already, but just check it out, whether it was on the mountain or at any point today after getting that text from your son asking for you to babysit. Was that just today or was it last night?
That was this morning, yeah.
Morning. Okay. So here they are, the 5 P's. Let's start there. Presence.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yep. Patience.
Yeah.
Perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Listen to everybody's perspective. Yeah.
Persistence.
Yeah.
Playfulness.
I was skiing while I was
That's
doing
what I was
all
thinking.
this.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Compassion.
Yeah. Bit of that. Yeah.
Yeah. For your parts, for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Connection.
Definitely.
Courage.
Yeah.
You said no.
Mm-hmm.
Clarity.
Getting there with clarity.
It's dawning. It's a gradual process, right? Calm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty self-led.
Pretty self-led. Yeah. So that's the question: burden-led or self-led? And it's not a black and white. Clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think initially it was burden-led,
Mm-hmm.
and then as I was skiing, it was definitely self-led, a self-led reflection.
Yep. Yep. All right. Anything
I think it was still burden-led when I said no.
else? Right.
Yeah.
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 Alison and I have been busy writing a new practice workbook for IFS, not for the Institute, but for practicing IFS model. And it's inspired by our Parts Work Practice Group. And just today we met and talked about the predominance of self, or sufficient self energy to be able to, like, tend to our parts and to be able to have self qualities emerge. And that's what I'm hearing as you're talking about this, that it was a process that started from getting triggered this morning or activated, having burdened parts, at the very least influence how you felt about the activation. But then what I'm hearing you describe is that throughout the day, tending to those parts with enough self energy to get to a place now where you're gaining in clarity, and look at all the qualities of self that have shown up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of interesting to me too is that it seemed like as I was listing off the qualities of self, you were becoming aware that self was on board.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially the P ones, like it's just like, oh yeah, that is self. Because I always sort of attribute those to the therapist, but it's like self. Yeah.
Yes. So what that validates for me is an ongoing awareness that is getting more and more clear and validated. And that is that we don't generate self. Our parts allow room and space for self, and self emerges, and then we begin to experience the qualities of self.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree does that line up with your experience today?
Yeah. And like this thought just popped into my head that, so my therapist part was along with me on that ski. And so I'm not sure if those P's were, that therapist part still, or if they were self.
Well, would you say that the therapist part is self-led or burden-led?
Well, the majority is self-led, yeah.
So self.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that's coming clear to me too, is it's not black and white. It's never black and white.
Yeah.
It really shouldn't be burden-led or self-led. How much burden-led and how much self-led? If
Yeah.
you give a percentage to today's experience, and that we don't need to get into math, but just there's a blending of it.
I'm very thankful for this conversation.
Me too. Me too. Anything else you want to say about the exercise or your experience before we check in with Cara and Alison about their listening experience?
It was just helpful to go through this because that was something that like Cara actually reached out and talked to a couple of people about it, and I didn't have that opportunity. So I'm taking the opportunity right now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So having this experience, this exercise to do that with, it's really helpful.
Helpful. Well, let's stay there for a moment. How is it helpful?
Well, it sort of organizes the process that I went through, and also it gives me a chance to articulate it and just put it out there and like have some validation and also just some energy like coming back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Okay with you if I check in with Alison and Cara now?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So whoever speaks first, would you like to report your experience of listening as I worked with Linda? You're both muted, so whenever you're ready, just unmute.
Okay. Cara and I are going to stare at each other. No talking. So I think what I know, I was tracking because I am a grandma too. And so when your son asks you to babysit, I felt parts of me were like, say no, say no. Let's say no together. 'Cause, man, that's a hard one. That's a hard one. So I have to admit there was a lot of cheering inside when you said I said no, and then when you went skiing, I'm thinking, oh, that was really cool to hear, and then tracking when you stop skiing to take notes of your parts. I don't know how many times when I'm with my system, I'll be in bed or I'll be in the shower and I'll get this thought, and it's like, oh my God, why in the middle of the shower? I don't get out of the shower, but it's barely dried off, and I'm like writing it down. So my system really appreciated that you were doing that too, that stopping while you're skiing to write down what you're hearing, because really that's where the gold is, right? When you're getting that instant communication. Because if I always say I'll remember, well, that's just not going to happen. I don't remember. So that was really fun to listen to. And then when kind of Bill was taking you through the P's and then the qualities of self, I also could kind of see your whole energy shifted, your body kind of lit up a little bit more with this like realization of like, oh yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, isn't that such a cool reality?
Yeah.
Sit with it for a while and have people hold up that mirror and say, yeah, look at this. What do you see in that mirror? You know, there's self in there with you, maybe more than you realized at the time. So I was really appreciative of that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. Cara, anything you'd like to share?
Yeah. Like as Linda mentioned, she and I met earlier this morning. So when you didn't talk much about your son. You just said had something going on with him. So when you shared that, I was like, oh no, on top of everything else, you've got this. You don't need this. So my part was very much like, no, like, and I really appreciated, the way you charted all of your parts. I really felt like a shared humanity. I don't have grandchildren, but just those requests of your time and your energy, and how many of them I know I get a day. And how quickly sometimes resentment seeps in, because it's like, where do I end, and like what I give to others begin? Or I'm not sure I'm quite saying that right, but that kind of resentment of like, so much is asked from me from so many different people. Like there's a part of me that was like, oh, okay, I'm not alone in this. Like other people feel that too, trying to find yourself among all the demands of life and what other people want from you. And I just thought your process was so just amazing. I love the skiing, like Alison. I love the note taking, and just kind of taking all your parts along with you. It was great. I really resonated with that. I loved imagining you on this ski slope being like, oh wait, I've got to write down what this part thinks. And I think as others have mentioned, the emerging qualities of self as it also, the other thing I guess I'm thinking as we're talking is like the importance of processing some of this, and that helps us get into more self energy about it. When it's all just internal and between ourselves, that's helpful, but it's really good to share it too, even if you didn't have the chance like I did to validate in the moment, to process it later, to be like, oh yeah, I actually did really well. Like, yeah, I felt really frustrated at the time. But yeah, look at all these aspects of self that were here. So I really appreciated the role that like the three of us could play in helping you to sort of get that perspective as well. That was a
Beautiful.
lot, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Cara. All right, so that leaves you, Alison. Have you got a circumstance that you can describe?
I do, but it's an interesting perspective. I shared with you and Cara the other day about this shift from that clingy part and where there was this huge unburdening and all that, which I'm not going to go storytelling, I promise, Bill. But I think the situation I have was a colleague of mine asked me to do something that just didn't, I'm also a certified IFS practitioner, and she wanted me to do something in that my professional hat that just didn't work with me. It was wrong. And historically, with burdened parts of me with this relationship, my yes part, my clingy part would have been the first one up to say yes. And then I would be resentful, and then I would be like, oh shit, I can't do this. And it would just been a mess. And so when she asked this, well, I still had the irritation, I still had the anger, I still had the activation. It was a really solid no. And it felt really, really good. Like there was no worry. I was very, very clear, comfortable with my no. I didn't over explain. It was just no, this is why. She asked me again, another, like, no, not, this is why. Was able to still look at her with compassion and like, I understand, blah, 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 blah. So I think for me, because I vented with my husband, I shared it with you guys, and it was interesting because it was almost the reverse. It was such a surprise for these parts because it was a new shift in how they show up. So it was almost like, oh, I need to check my reality because this is so different, right? I'm not showing up with a nice person and then I go vent and then I'm even resentful. I was still pissed but it's not a part pissed. It is like, no, this is not right. It feels more of a place of clarity and self. Like this is not a right thing to do. So it was I'm listening. So it's a really interesting shift of an experience because, well, I can still see some parts showed up with residual burdens and they're not quite comfortable in this new role, this new way of existing. And so there was this pull to go back to what was familiar is more that I noticed versus a reaction from a burdened place. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. So it was kind of a cool, because this has been a like lifelong group of parts and energy for me. So it was kind of my first foray out in this new type of place of being. And so there was more of a kind of a looking around like, uh-oh, is this okay? Is this okay? Is this right? Am I right? So I'm like, trying to talk to people like, am I right? This feels weird. So I think that for me, so I don't know how much that fits with your exercise.
Let me go through it and tell you how it fit. I've been taking lots of notes, but I have a question for you. At the end there, you said you go through and you wonder, is this okay? Am I right? Are you referring to previously, or that was part of this experience?
The shift was it's hard to put words to it because I'm still processing it out. It was for the parts, how when you're so familiar, even when it's not really helpful, like a burdened part and it's been doing this job for like forever and there's this shift. That's what it felt like. It felt more like these parts were kind of looking around like and wanting validate. This is where the self of other people comes in. Because while I trusted myself, there was no question in terms of me saying no, but there really was this kind of looking around at other people connecting with their self of, oh, okay. I don't know if I'm making sense at all.
You are. Let's see if I can clarify.
Okay.
Just by reflecting back what I think I understand so far. The circumstance is a circumstance where a part was activated that you noticed. The activation was an immediate no. And how did you feel that in your body?
It was powerful, you guys. It was powerful. it was like, no. And there was a rightness to it. And there was a no backing down. There was, and the no, it wasn't an angry no. The anger was a different anger. It was on another level of a different, anyway, I'm not going to go into that because it doesn't matter here. For the business piece of it, the IFS business piece of this relationship, it was a very solid, freeing no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the thoughts that I heard you saying that you noticed were that this is not right. That was associated with the no and with the angry. And this is me analyzing a little bit, but let me just check it out with you. That anger did come from a part, a previously burdened part that's in a new role now and wondering, is it still okay? I mean, here I'm angry, and maybe it's okay to be angry here.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. That's a very, because I remember calling my husband and I'm like, I'm really angry. And he's in it. And he's like, well, yeah, it was appropriate. Like it was an appropriate response to the situation, the present situation. It wasn't tied into the past. It was an appropriate response to the present
situation. Very nice distinction.
Yes, it was a very cool distinction, but it was very different.
Well, I'm talking about right now, what a nice distinction that was, as you cleared it up for me. And there's a missing for me. There was until you said that just now. Like, how can, I guess I've kind of had the understanding that strong emotions of any kind are a reflection of a burdened part. But what I'm getting from you right now is that's not especially true.
No.
And maybe the evidence of that, or the criteria to check that out, is the emotion you're experiencing right now appropriate to this current situation? Or is it tethered still to the past somehow?
Yeah. And it also is helpful that I wasn't, how can I say this? I wasn't really angry at the person so much as the request. Like it was the separating the person from the request.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, yeah. See what you did? Was there anything that you wanted to do that you didn't?
No. And that's what's so cool is I said both times when she asked me, like, Cara, you were saying there was a little bit of an impulse from, like, I want to explain my life away or whatever. And that was like a nanosecond. I was like, no. And it was a genuine no. It wasn't like another part coming in saying, no, you can't say this, or let's write a book and let's, whatever. It was like, no. So it was very clear. It was like, no, this is why, no. And it was to the point, to the professional piece of it. No, this isn't going to work for me.
Was there anything that you did that you didn't want to do? Is that the same thing I just?
Yeah, no.
Oh, so was there anything that you didn't want to do, but you did it? I'm asking the same question again and again. There's something that there's a distinction there. So things that you didn't do that you wanted to, things that you did do that you didn't want to. I guess that's what I'm.
I think the only thing I can think of is I think about the time when I was venting. I think you were doing something with it was our planning, and I was just talking to you, Cara and Eileen, and I think I just blasted away, and I regret that. Yeah. I wish I hadn't been quite so forceful about the frustration. I think that's probably my biggest regret.
So there's a part, right? There's a part probably still tethered to the past a little bit that was coming. Yeah.
And it was, like, I didn't need to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, how does it fit in this exercise? You had a circumstance, a part got activated. You had thoughts, this is not right. And in reaction then to what? Wait, this is not right. We're going to say no. In reaction to that, you had thoughts from other parts that were saying, is this okay? Am I right? Am I right? I hope I'm right. I can't afford to be wrong here. And then the anger was associated with the no. Righteous was associated with the no, but then unsure was associated with, is this okay? And am I right? In terms of emotions related to thoughts.
Yeah, but it was more from a place of, this is so different.
Yeah. New territory for parts.
New territory versus like a young part who was, I didn't feel like I was young. I felt like it was more of a, oh, wow. is this okay? I mean, this is like a new world. It's like a new world here. Is this what this is going to look like? Is what it felt like.
I know how much you love math, so I'm going to ask you to give me a percentage. What percentage in this circumstance have you been self-led compared to burden-led?
In this particular time right now?
In this circumstance, just overall, the circumstance triggered you, now time has passed and you've had your experience.
I would say 80 self.
That's exactly the number I was going to.
Really? Yeah. 80
Based on
self.
what you just said, it sounds like 80-20 to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything else you want to say about this exercise or about that circumstance or your experience of it?
Just, I have an immense gratitude. I'm just so grateful for my parts and for, you know, I feel like I'm going to do like a little plug for IFS. I truly am grateful though. I mean, you know, my story, Bill, has not been an easy journey, and really, really profoundly grateful for these moments. I love these moments of shifts of clarity. Every time I have these major shifts, I think, surely this is the end. I am like done with this shit. And that never is true, but I'm going to enjoy this ride right now and see how long it goes.
Yeah. Great. Okay, if I check in with Linda and Cara about their listening experience. All right. Linda, you're already unmuted. Can I start with you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, I just had some thoughts about, it was just more like thoughts about things that came up. And one of those was about the anger. And I thought like, oh, that sounds like a part just transformed into a motivated part. And it was, and the anger provides the motivation sort of thing. I don't know, but like that's kind of what happens in my system.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And also your conversation was kind of triggering another part that was coming along on my ski with me today, which was like this part that is concerned about ethics. And yeah, I actually put a name and a face to it today. It became very clear, and I kind of wondered, like, okay, so is this about ethics for you? You know? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah, so I really resonated with that part that was up for you.
I didn't realize how strong that part was up until, or how important that part is for me until this experience. So it was great for that information alone. But yeah, it was very much an ethical.
And I found a lot of appreciation for my ethical part today too, and just I'm appreciating yours.
Yeah.
By ethical, are you pointing to integrity, like this is a boundary for me and I'm going to honor it? Is that what you're saying by ethical?
For me, it's very much tied to like an ethics course I took through marriage and family therapy. So it's tied to doing therapy, really.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Is that the same one, Alison? Like tied to therapy?
I'm not a therapist, but I am a certified IFS practitioner. So yes, in that role as an IFS practitioner, that was that was my line of the sand for me for my job of ethics. Yes.
Yeah.
It was not right.
Helpful to hear both of you answer that question. Thank you. I now understand better.
Yeah. Right. And then there was a thought that you were experimenting with a new way of being. Like I just thought about this little experimenter person inside your system. You know, I'm going to try this and see what the results are. And now I'm going to like look at the results and see if that's going to carry on, you know.
Little scientist, huh? Researcher.
Pardon me?
Like a scientist, researcher.
Yeah. I'm just, I like that.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else, Linda?
Yeah, thanks very much, Alison.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And Cara?
Yeah, I just have so much. I have a lot of parts with a lot of thoughts up. But the thing I'm really drawn to talking about is as a lifelong people pleaser, as someone who has been, for all sorts of reasons, learned to be very afraid of my anger. I can often use IFS to talk me out of my own anger, be like, oh, it's just a part, and try to IFS my way out of it. And what your share is reminding me is the ways in which these emotions are important. The goal isn't to not feel them. Like, and that's about integrity, ethics, all these things of, I think maybe Linda mentioned boundaries, is the importance for people, I think women to some extent too, to really own that anger and really sit in the clarity of it and not be like, oh, this is just a part that I need to just, can you please step aside and let room for self, that this could actually be tied to being self-led, is really listening to that anger, really honoring that. I think that's the biggest piece. And then also just kind of like Linda mentioned, just watching the journey and kind of resonating where I've had those moments of like, oh, I feel this clarity. I'm doing something different than I would have done 6 months or 2 years ago, and kind of like almost waiting for the other shoe to drop. Or can I really do this? Can I? Like, I think I can. That sort of like, I don't know, neural rewiring that's happening when you're doing that. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, it is cool.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I want to thank each of you. This has been a great conversation. And I think for the viewer of the video, I hope that you'll take this exercise on and just notice over the next week, when you notice that something has happened and you have an involuntary internal reaction to that, get curious about it. And then maybe pull out this form at some point at the end of the day and find one situation during the day where that happened. You had a part of you was activated, also known as I had an internal reaction to something that happened externally. And now let me get curious about it, like Linda was saying, like a scientist might, like a researcher might, and like you're doing an experiment. What happens? What thoughts did I have initially? How did they progress throughout the day after that circumstance happened? What feelings, what body sensations did I experience? Or turn that around, depending on how you relate and sense yourself. Maybe it's more somatic, maybe it's more emotional, maybe it's more cognitive for you. Whatever it is, just acknowledge, maybe document what it is that you noticed for yourself first. But ask these questions: what happened in my body? What emotions did I experience? What thoughts did I have? What actions did I take? What actions did I take that I wish I hadn't? What actions did I want to take and didn't and wish I had? And then once that you've fleshed all that out, then check in. Did I experience any self in this? How much self did I experience in this? You heard me list off the 5 P's, the 8 C's. That's a great checklist. Let me go through the 5 P's again. Presence. I'm looking over here. I got it on my computer tower, and on a Post-it note. It's always helpful to have it right here. Presence, patience, perspective, persistence, playfulness. Someone offered a new P the other day. I loved it. Possibility. Compassion, connection, courage, clarity, calm, creative, curious, confidence. And here's 3 more extra C's: caring, companioning, and choice. Thank you all. Thank you 3 for helping me with this exercise, and thanks viewer for watching it all the way to the end. Do any of you want to be contacted by anybody that's watched this video? In other words, are you open for new clients? And if so, I'll invite you now to just let them know how to get a hold of you. Do you have a website or? Yes, I see your Cara. Do you want to just?
I do, yeah.
Do you want to send that to me and I'll put it in notes, or do you want to just tell them right now, or both?
Yeah, the website is integratingscatteredparts.com, and I can send it to you as well.
Say that again slower.
Integratingscatteredparts.
Oh, scattered parts. Okay. .com. Okay. And Linda, Alison, you both full, or do you have openings?
Yeah, I'm kind of in that in-between space, so not just yet.
Yeah, and I'll hang on for now. Thanks.
Okay.